Hello and welcome to Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast, a show where two former
And they were
roommates
roommates.
talk about a new movie every week. This week on the show, we're talking about Midsommar.
I told you that I want to go to that festival in Sweden.
No, you said it would be cool to go.
Yeah, and then I got the opportunity and I decided
Look,
to
I
do
don't mind
it.
you going. I just wish you would have told me. That's all.
Dude, she needs a therapist. You've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for like a year now.
And don't forget about all of the beautiful Swedish women you meet in June.
Okay, guys.
That's not her again. Seriously?
Babe, what's happening? Danny.
I was so very sorry to hear about what happened.
I'm sorry.
I invited Danny to come to Sweden. You know what she's been going through.
Christian says you've got this special week planned.
It's sort of a crazy festival. Special ceremonies and dressing up.
That sounds fun.
As always, I'm your host, Corbin Zvokel, and joining me is my co-host, Cody Webb. Now, Cody, I feel like I'm curious, how do you pronounce this movie? Because I feel like maybe we should address that first if we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that is something I wanted to bring up pretty quickly. Just because, I mean, you always say it Midsommar, which I don't know. I feel like maybe that is the correct way to say it, but I think the vast majority of like the public would say just like Midsummer. So I don't really know. It's kind of a toss up. I feel like you can go pretty much whatever way you really want.
Yeah, I think really either is acceptable. Like if you just look up the word, I think it tells you like midsummer on Google. Ari Aster, I think, pronounces it as Midsommar. So I guess if you're
Of
gonna
course
take,
he does.
if you're gonna take, from the source, I don't know. But I feel like every time I say it, I just sound pretentious. So that like I almost just want to say midsummer just to not sound like an asshole. But we're caught in between the weeds, I guess.
I do agree that every time you say it, it sounds really pretentious. I definitely agree on that. But yeah, Midsommar. Maybe for this episode you can say Midsummer and I can say Midsommar. Just switch it up.
Switch it up. I just hey, there's also there's a third way you could be like Midsommar.
There's no U. I guess you could say like Midsommar. Like, accentuate the A at the end, maybe.
Yeah.
don't
So if
know.
you were to do like Midsommar, 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 let's just switch it up every time we say it. Let's keep people guessing. Obviously, we're talking about Midsommar. You pick this movie, but I think given things that are in pop culture right now, the star of this movie is obviously Florence Pugh, and she's very heavily involved in a lot of drama regarding Don't Worry Darling. And surprisingly, we have not like discussed it up to this point on the podcast. We're a little bit late, I would say. The movie's now come out. So I'm just curious to kind of get your thoughts and opinions about the just everything. I mean, we really haven't talked about any of it.
Yeah. And I think it does lead into like a little bit why I picked the movie.
Why?
I mean, it is pretty topical right now with everything going on with Florence Pugh. But I mean, yeah, it's been wild. So obviously there's a film that is out now currently called what is it called? Don't Worry Darling.
Don't Worry Darling.
Weird title. But it's got a good cast, Chris Pine, Harry Styles, Florence Pugh, and it has one of my favorite directors, Olivia Wilde. But there's been a lot of stuff that's gone down in the production of the film, which has obviously, raised a lot of red flags. Noticeably, big feud between Olivia Wilde and Florence Pugh, mostly coming from a big affair between Olivia Wilde herself, the director, and Harry Styles, one of the, leads. So, and then basically there's as well been a lot of debate during the press tour for it. Florence Pugh really hasn't, gone out and done anything to promote the movie, which, is her choice and it seems very fair with everything involved. And also Shia LaBeouf was also attached at one point.
Yeah,
and
that's
then he
like a
got
whole
fired.
secondary, but also important to the plot.
Yeah. So basically, Olivia Wilde's a piece of scum. That's my conclusion.
Well,
I'd love to hear your take on it, though.
First of all, I want to say just like generally talk about this movie. Once you see it, I'm sure we'll have a greater discussion about the movie itself.
Yeah.
It is not receiving good reviews. It's got a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes. We've obviously talked in the past about, the importance of Rotten Tomatoes, but I think a 38%, regardless of what you think of Rotten Tomatoes, is not a good sign. I will say the audience score is 78, so people are enjoying this. There's the Harry Styles factor in his fan base, and that's both maybe contributed to some of the money that this has made, and maybe that audience score being a little bit higher. I would say I don't think, just off the bat, I don't think it's as bad as everybody has been reacting, but it's not a great movie. Also,
Well, that could be good. Sorry, Coach. I think since the expectations are so low for me, that maybe I'll actually enjoy it. Which could be a good thing. But I think that audience score could, be leaning to all the Harry Styles fans out there a little bit.
there's also a certain, I mean, obviously, like the way that drama and social media, it it's a toxic place at the end of the day, right? Like Twitter will have its way with everything, particularly the spitting incident, which, like, I mean, I'll admit the video does look like Harry Styles spit on him. I think in retrospect that probably did not happen. But you take, it's easy to take like these little moments out of context and blow it up into a huge thing. I mean, and this movie has seen that happen with like 6 different events over the course of its filming. Like you mentioned, the Florence Pugh, not participating really. I will say there has, in the last week since the movie's come out, people have started to come forward more in a positive light, say that, hey, things that have been happening on set are untrue. I know a big majority of the cast like signed an open letter saying a big majority of the crew said that like nothing unprofessional happened on set and there wasn't, anything wrong with the way Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles acted. I listen, the thing is, like, we just don't know, and like we probably never will know like exactly what happened. I'm sure at some point there will be like a documentary or a 5-part Netflix series about the making of this movie, but a lot of it's overblown. It's also important to think about, this is a female director. Sometimes there's a lot, like, think about how many men have probably done similar things on sets with the stars of their movies and cheated. Like, it's happened so many times, and there's definitely a bit of a double standard. I think Olivia Wilde is taking a little bit more heat. It also doesn't help that her husband was such a popular and lovable figure in Jason Sudeikis. It's also like easy to hate on Harry Styles. I think if you're not a fan, it's easy to hate. So I do want to, like, I don't know if Olivia Wilde's a piece of scum necessarily. I would say in most parts she probably has been in the wrong repeatedly with, the handling of the Shia LaBeouf stuff. I don't want to say Shia LaBeouf should have been in this movie, but I think the way that she like presented it and was definitely not done correctly by any means. And then, her and Florence have some sort of relationship. Obviously she did leave her husband for Harry Styles, it appears. So there's just a lot.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think there probably is, a very double standard down there with like a female director. And Olivia Wilde, like I said, is one of my favorite directors, so it's kind of tough. But yeah, the whole Shia LaBeouf stuff, I don't particularly care about. I mean, Shia's clearly got a couple screws loose, so I don't know why you'd have that guy on, cast anyways. But yeah, I mean, the main conflict for me is like between Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde. But I mean, obviously you throw in Sudeikis in there as well, and she just keeps looking worse. But yeah, I mean, the whole situation, like you said, we don't really know.
And Florence posted like a long,
like 1%.
She posted a long thing on Instagram when the movie came out, and about how much she appreciated everybody who worked on it. And one of the pictures was her and Olivia Wilde, and she like tagged Olivia Wilde. So obviously, like, people want to keep up a certain public persona and aren't going to, I think Florence Pugh especially just decided, I'm just not going to talk about this. I'm just going to not even involve myself, which I think is probably the smartest decision for her, kind of taking that high road, I guess, quote unquote.
Yep. And, that's all I can do sometimes, but I do agree. It's kind of like we are speaking on the situation, like we are on set every single day, which is just what we do in media nowadays. But it is a pretty interesting story, and with all the stuff that's come out, it's gonna catch fire pretty quickly.
That's the thing. I will say, like, it's fun to just have like movies be at the forefront of pop culture, and sometimes they're not, especially this is an original story, from an exciting young director, her second feature. It's written by the same person who wrote Booksmart. It's got a lot going for it. Unfortunately, in
It
the
seems like a
execution.
very different movie from Booksmart, though, correct?
Yeah, so
Don't
it's
spoil
so
anything.
I'm not gonna like say anything about, but the if you're familiar with what the Blacklist is, it's basically like a website organization where people can like submit scripts and like share scripts, and then within there they'll like win awards or like be like nominated as like the Blacklist script of the year. And oftentimes those scripts then get picked up from Hollywood. It's one way that like scripts get picked up from maybe unknown sources. This movie was based on a Blacklist script that then was taken by the Booksmart writer and like rewritten pretty heavily. That's most often what happens with a lot of these Blacklist scripts. There'll be a story, and then a Hollywood studio will buy it, bring in another screenwriter, they'll completely rewrite things. And that's when you'll see those instances of like, oh, this was written by one person I've never heard of, and then like two popular screenwriters. If you see those in the credits, there's a good chance it's like, hey, this is probably a completely different story that's been rewritten. So it's hard to say where it's at.
Hey, it's Korbin, and I'm just editing the podcast, and I wanted to jump in and share a little bit more information about the original screenwriter of the Don't Worry Darling script. So it was a Blacklist script from 2019, but the people who wrote the original script were these two guys, Carrie Van Dyke and Shane Van Dyke, and they are the grandsons of Dick Van Dyke. So kind of just a weird two people to be involved with this, but just wanted to share that. And then of course it was rewritten by Katie Silberman, who worked on Booksmart. Fun stuff.
Again, I don't want to spoil anything about this movie. There's definitely plenty to be spoiled. So
That is kind of tough, winning an award on your script and then, some big Hollywood big shot being like, oh, great story, great try there, you won a great award, but I'm just going to change everything about it. So that's kind of tough. But yeah, supposedly it's got an interesting premise, at least just based off that. So, I guess I'm excited.
I will say it looks great, and there's some good performances in there. There's some not great performances. Let's move on though to the real movie of the hour, Midsommar. Did you have any other thoughts about why you picked this, or just want to get into initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'll do kind of just both.
Good morning, Vietnam.
So I mean, like I said, it is kind of topical, and I don't know. This movie's just always been on my list of. It looks really
First time watch, right?
Yeah, this is the first time I'd seen it, and I do like Florence Pugh. I like her a lot in the MCU. So, and there are a lot of smaller actors in this movie as well that I like a lot. So, Chidi from The Good Place, and as well Eyebrows from We're the Millers and
Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
True, yeah. Will Poulter, good guy. He's a good actor. He's puffed up for Adam Warlock, but he's also in The Maze Runner as well, which is a movie I like. But yeah, initial thoughts from me. I say we just jump straight into this. I think it's an interesting film. Obviously, it's an A24. It's got the aesthetic, I feel like, of an A24 a lot. It's this weird psycho horror, and it's kind of all taking place in the same location, which I like a lot as well. I think the set design for this little town in Sweden, as well as the costume design, is actually pretty sick. And to top on that, I think like the specific like filmmaking is actually very, very good in this movie. There's tons of shots I'm sure you'll go into, but there's some that stuck out to me, like the upside down tracking shot, them driving down the road. I thought it was sick. I don't know if I've ever seen that before somehow, but I like that a lot. And then there's a cool like transition shot where she goes onto the plane. I thought that was really well done as well. And then they have these kind of just like trippy movements with like nature, trees, grass, and stuff. The characters are on, mushrooms, obviously, but there's just like those trippy camera effects I really, really like. So that was probably my biggest positive. My biggest negative would likely just be the plot in general. It's kind of a slow burn. There's a lot of stuff I'll go into later, but I really think most of the plot it's really not too effective, if I'm being completely honest. And I'll go into that a lot later. But just like the technical stuff as well as the performances, I do like a lot in this movie, which is typical of an A24. But I am kind of in between in a lot of stuff here, and I'm sure we'll get into it a lot more. But I do want to hear your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in a pretty similar place to you actually. Like I agree that the plot is definitely the weakest point of this, but when it comes to like the technical filmmaking of it, it's really impressive. The cinematography, the production design, like you said, I think specifically even just like the setting as a whole is really great, both as like a character and like the physical setting. The fact though, like the 24-hour daylight, or at least the like all day daylight, creates a really like trippy and disorienting effect, and a vast majority of this movie takes place during the day. I think there's only maybe 2 or 3 scenes in the final cut that are actually at night, the one where he's stealing the book and taking pictures, and then obviously the scene at the beginning where her sister commits suicide and kills her parents. But besides that, the rest of the movie is like completely in the daylight, and for a horror movie to be, the thing is, I wouldn't say this is necessarily scary, but like to be chilling and effective in its thrills and do that in the daylight is pretty impressive and pretty fantastic work by Ari Aster. There's some interesting themes here with their relationship and kind of like the male domineering of their relationship and the way he like gaslights and lies to her. And I think there's specific moments where he's talking with his friends about the relationship that's very different from his actual interactions with Florence Pugh's character. And I think those moments are really good to see. Also, you mentioned like the mushrooms. And I think now I'll say this right off the bat. I've never, taken a psychedelic like this, but I think the way that it captures the drug use is really interesting. And the way that like anxiety plays into the drug use that they have, and just like anxiety in general. There is a lot of cool trippy stuff throughout. You can see like her sister's face in the woods. There's a lot of like moving, stuff throughout, cool cinematography, cool VFX stuff that they do in post. And then also kind of the way that they get to the cult right away, and they're given the drugs is almost, it's kind of part of their indoctrination and part of their, like, we're going to get you tripping out on drugs to kind of, force you into the society. And that's, accurate to a lot of cults in modern day, and kind of the way that they subdue people and the way that they may use drugs and other disarming things to kind of pull you in when you don't realize it. For the vast majority of this movie, the only thing that keeps it from not being the most boring movie in the world is just that, like, you want to know what weird shit is going to happen next, because there's just so much weird shit. And I'll say, having now seen this movie, I think for three or four times, it definitely loses some of that shock value on rewatch. So it almost, again, makes it a little bit harder to get through. It is a little bit long and a slow burn, like you said. And
I feel like it's very long. Yeah.
It's tough because it's like so dense and there's a lot to unpack in a ton of scenes, but at the same time, it's so easy to just like, this movie's so easy to get distracted from. And then like our 2 main characters, Florence Pugh and her boyfriend, Jack Rayner's character, they don't even speak for the last 25 minutes of this movie, which is crazy. And there's other characters to speak, but there's not a ton of dialogue. So like, just think of a 2-hour movie, the last quarter of it is, there's like barely any talking. You can kind of see why things slow down a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on between those characters as well in the third act. And for them not to speak, well, obviously I think like off camera, there's a couple words from Florence Pugh, like picking him, to die or whatever. But yeah, I think that is actually really interesting. And to touch on what you're saying earlier too about like its commentary on relationships, I think that is the strongest plot point it has. I think that's pretty interesting. Like this couple, I think his name's Christian in the movie, right? What's Florence Pugh's character's name? I don't remember.
Danny.
But anywho, I think their relationship. What is it?
Danny.
Oh, Danny. Right. Yeah, Danny. Great name. She's a Ninja Turtle or something. But anywho, I think like that commentary is pretty interesting. Donatello. Whatever. Anywho, I'm completely off track. their relationship, I think is interesting. It takes a look at, a long-term relationship where it seems to be dwindling down at the end, kind of just a loss of respect between both of them. Um, and they kind of, parachuted into this, I don't even know what to call it, this cult, I guess is what it technically is. And they just do the rest. They'll just rip them apart basically. But I think that downfall is pretty interesting. I think it also is trying to talk about, like family and maybe trying to say something about like suicide as well with her sister.
There's definitely a lot of, I mean, like I mentioned the anxiety stuff, but just like the mental health aspect is
Yeah,
definitely prevalent.
the, th- the thing is about that, I don't know if they really say anything. It's kind of just like in the first scene, and then she's kind of just getting like flashbacks of her parents or her sister, but there's really nothing said about it. So I think that's kind of interesting, where that's kind of just in the background the entire movie, and there's no real like payoff for like a moment for her where maybe she's accepted it, or probably not accepted it. She's just grieving, obviously, which is a main theme too. But I don't know. I feel like it just wasn't handled the best way, because that opening scene is, I think, pretty just troubling. It sticks with you, I think, without the movie, and then kind of to just have that hanging there the rest of the movie and not really do anything with it. I think it is a misstep there too.
The one thing I asked before we move on is, at what point in your watching this did it like begin to feel like a horror movie to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like not really in the first hour much. I think that opening where like the fire, whatever ambulance people are walking in and her sister's there, that's scary. That's some scary stuff. But I mean, after that, I don't know. I mean, like the people are disappearing. What's his name? The Brits or whatever. Like that's kind of scary. There's some imagery that's weird and stuff. But I mean, kind of until like Chidi gets smacked in the head, I wasn't really scared. I feel like.
Yeah,
Oh, Chidi. Do you know who Chidi is when I'm
yeah,
talking about that,
yeah.
by the
William
way?
Jackson
Okay.
Harper. Yeah, yeah. Josh
No, I'm just gonna
is
call
his
him
character's
Chidi the
name.
entire episode.
That's
So
all
sorry
right.
about
You could
that.
call him Mr. Fantastic too, I guess, because that was our Mr. Fantastic pick.
Good pick.
Let's go ahead and move on to roll credits.
Roll credits.
I got a lot to talk about in this segment for some reason. I wanted to throw it to you possibly first. Do you know when they say it for the first time in this movie? When do they officially roll the credits? Like, 'cause I have no idea.
I mean, I would imagine it's probably when they're sit like in the bar, like when she first finds out
Yeah,
that they're going to Sweden, and she's like, "Why are you going there?" And like the Midsummer Festival, right? Like that's probably when they say it
yeah.
first time.
That's what I assume too. I feel like they say it about 100 times in this movie, so I didn't do my research and go back. But I like that. I think it is a good title, and it's kind of just like a question mark as well. Like, oh, what even is Midsummer? Obviously, it's festival. So I dig the title, but I did want to talk about the opening and closing scenes because I think those are much more interesting. Yeah, kind of talking about what I was before, like the opening scene. It kind of has nothing, really to do with the rest of the movie.
Well,
It's
the
in a
very
much
first,
different.
the very
Uh,
first image is this
well, yeah,
tapestry painting that, if you like actually go like and look at it, it lays out the events of the movie to
right.
you.
I figured that. That's kind of just boring. What do you think about that? Do you like seeing the entire movie before like it's gonna happen? Because I saw that and I was like, oh, this is just the entire movie. Oh, I'm not gonna pay attention because it's just gonna ruin it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it like stays there for too long, and it's not necessarily. I'm pulling it up to look at it again. Like, it's not like you can like look at this and be like, oh wow, I know every story beat now. It's just kind of like this story of you see the like the them like the love potion stuff is kind of hit there, and the killing of the people at the end is essentially like kind of what it leads to. It's not the like most clear representation of the events of the movie. So I don't think it's like necessarily a spoiler to look at it.
I mean, true, but it's gonna give you clues to what's gonna happen. That to me is just flaw. I feel like this movie, it does just have like just extra stuff that maybe you didn't need, and that does contribute to the runtime as well. But yeah, I kind of
Well,
want to shout out the opening because I don't really like it.
did you know, Cody, that there's a director's cut of this movie that is like 30 minutes longer?
Mm. I was not aware of that. Ari putting even more work in. But have you seen that? Does it add anything? Or do you know?
I haven't, but so it's the original cut, and it was NC-17, so he cut a lot of it because it's just more graphic stuff. There's some like other stuff I think that they just cut for time as well, but like when they first submitted like what that cut was, the reason it got recut down was because of the rating. So, I guess I mean this is already a pretty graphic movie at points. I think you can get like rent the extended cut version. Again, like the current cut is already so long to me. I wouldn't really want to watch an extra 30 minutes.
I want to talk about the closing scene as well, just because it does something that I do like in movies, like leaving the ending up to interpretation. And I mean, it's kind of campy, it's kind of predictable, but what do you think about like Florence Pugh like smiling at the last shot of the movie?
I don't know. I think the ending itself, like, because like she's not a good person at the end of this movie, right? Like, I guess you can say like, she's been tricked, and it's tough because it's not like you should root for Christian's character either, because he's like a terrible person. But then, I mean, here she is like burnt, like sacrificing him in a bear costume, and that's kind of fucked up.
Just a little bit, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what to think about this ending. I kind of don't like it. I feel like it doesn't really match her character. I mean, the ending is cool. The bear costume is so weird. And that last scene, the camera work in that too, I think is really good. Like moving around to all the different people, like in the barn before they burn down. Even like just Christian and those two guys sitting there, like just their expressions, I think are really interesting. But yeah, it's kind of like a villain turn at the end, and she's got like this Joker laugh, which I kind of just don't like. But the opening and closing, pretty interesting in this movie. Those are probably like the two things I think maybe you could break down the most. Which I mean, you could break down a lot in this movie, to be fair, but I feel like those are the two things that kind of stand out to me.
The other thing in this category is talking about Ari Aster a little bit, and for me, his other big movie, Hereditary, that came out before this, another A24 film as well. The ending for me is very similar between the two movies, and they both just don't work for me. So essentially, like, not to spoil anything at the end of that movie, it's more of a true horror than this is. But something happens, and a main character, basically has like it basically the final shot is on this like main character who has some like realization and is crowned as some spiritual deity or whatever. But it's just like there's a lot of buildup in his movies to like what you hope to be like a really interesting and well explained climax maybe, and it kind of just the explanation and the solution is never something I think that works for me. I guess I just have found both with Hereditary and this movie that his endings just don't work for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe he just needs some work with his endings. So
I mean, some people really love him, but I don't know. I'm not personally. I can't.
Is he trying to be like the new Shyamalan or something? What's going on here, Ari? I think you're too focused on a twist at the end. Kind of weird.
He does have a new movie coming out called Disappointment Boulevard with our man Joaquin Phoenix, and I guess the original cut of that film was like 4 hours long.
Oh, right. So, I do remember hearing about
that. Curious to see what the final runtime of that is going to be. I think it's coming out next year, so look forward to that in 2023. I mean, but
Joaquin is going to try to make it as long as possible. That guy's a psycho as well. So
hey, honestly, like them working together is sounds pretty great, and it's also got Michael Gandolfini, who is the son of
James Gandolfini.
James Gandolfini, was in the Many Saints of Newark. So
nice. If it's 4 hours, I probably won't check it out.
I don't think it's going to be 4 hours. I don't think they're going to release a 4-hour movie.
Interesting.
Let's move on to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start off with the good. The main thing is I think this movie is not necessarily successful in being scary, but is extremely successful in being disorienting. And I think from the moment that they get to Sweden, it does a really good job of that. I mentioned the way it utilizes kind of that all day sunlight thing to kind of create that effect of, even the characters are like, it's 9 p.m. right now. Like I'm tripping on mushrooms and I'm sitting outside and it's dead like sunlight and you're telling me it's 9 o'clock, like that right there is just like, it kind of puts you in their shoes of like, what the fuck is going on? I'm confused. And then just throughout, like, it's hard to kind of keep track of how long they've been there. It's, you obviously don't know like what drugs they're on at any given time, but like that plays a role throughout. And you kind of wonder if, is there an unreliable narrator at certain points? There's also like this, you're experiencing a cult that is completely different from anything you've ever seen. These people jump off a fucking cliff and like there's all this crazy shit that happens. And then also something that they do is the Swedish dialogue is pretty much never subtitled. So like anytime the characters are talking amongst each other, you have no idea what they're saying, which kind of plays into that of like you're in the character's shoes, you're disoriented, you're lost in this world a little bit.
Yeah. And that is super effective, I think, as well, not putting dialogue on that. I think there was like one or two times where maybe it did pop up. I think maybe the Christian weird sex scene, I think maybe it's in there a little bit. I can't remember. But there was a couple times where like, oh, they did use it there, which is interesting. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think using what you said earlier, the setting as a character, I think that's really a good way to put it. This movie does a great job setting that up. I mean, this cult as a whole, it probably is the best character of the movie, if I'm being honest. So props there. And then what I wanted to shout out for good as well, just like the performances in general, I think are very good from this cast. Florence Pugh, standout. I mean, she has a lot of stuff where just like facial expressions, which I think is very hard to do. I think she does that well. And then I really like Chi and Will Poulter as well. I think both of those. I mean, like I said, those are just like actors who I knew before. So I mean, those are the ones I'm going to be watching a little bit more. But I thought they were excellent in this movie. Her boyfriend Christian, I thought he was okay. I think he's not really a great actor, if I'm being completely honest, especially after looking up his IMDb, which I'll get to in a trivia a little bit later. But I mean, all the Swedes as a whole, I think, are really good too. They just slide into these characters, pretty nonchalantly, and you don't question anything about the cult. So, camera work, performance wise, I mean, I'm raving this movie. Pretty good stuff.
I second the acting thing as well. I think Will Poulter, especially like his character, is such a shithead, and he plays that so well. It's really incredible how good he is, honestly, at doing it. Just really? Like with him when he's like just like vaping there in Sweden is just like so funny to me. He's definitely the fun. I mean, he's like an asshole, but he's probably also the funniest part of the movie. And then like, of course, he dies because he like pissed on the sacred tree, and then he like, I mean, gets killed, and somebody wears his skin as a suit later in the movie. So
yeah, pretty weird stuff. Oh yeah, that's just weird in general. But I really don't like how they deal with the character deaths, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But like doing everything off screen really pisses me off. Because I wanted like a fun death for like Will Poulter, just because he's a dick. Specifically in that, like I think there's a dream or a vision scene where they're like driving off and Florence Pugh's watching them, and he's just leering at her like through the back seat. I love that shit. But yeah, Chidi and Will Poulter, shout out. I'm jacked for Guardians 3. So
yeah,
good cast.
The last thing I want to say for good, I think the utilization of sound throughout is also really effective. If you listen to this with headphones on, there's different points where like even the sound will like pan left to right, specifically like when there's the big dance scene at the end and they're like doing the May Queen dance off or whatever, as they're like spinning around. If you were to listen to it with headphones, the music will like pan from right to left, and it just kind of adds to that, like, oh, this is a weird like ooh. And then there's just a lot of like sound effects and ominous noises. And I think in horror, like good sound design is really important, and it, in terms of creating tension, it's one of the areas that this movie is able to create tension when it's, like I said, a movie that takes place mostly during the day, and a lot of graphic stuff does appear on screen, a lot of it also happens off screen. So sound is something that can kind of add to the environment and unsettle you further.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the bad. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the main thing is just like, I don't know what the fuck is happening for most of this movie. Like even having seen it multiple times, it's just like, I just don't know. Right. And there's just like some graphic stuff that I don't like the idea of. There's the tapestry that kind of lays out the making of the love potion, and then we see that in action over the next 90 minutes from that moment on. And that stuff is probably the grossest, I guess, part of the movie. The people jumping off the cliff is just kind of shocking and scary. I think it's fine for the movie. And then there's just mainly what we talked about it being like kind of boring. The story itself is not as engaging. You're more just engaged by like, this is weird and I want to keep watching it because I have no idea where it's going. The other thing is, I would say this is not a good family movie. The first time I watched this, I sat down with my mom.
Oh no.
Luckily, she did
no.
not stick around for very long, but yeah, wouldn't recommend it.
That's brutal. No, I would highly recommend against watching this with your parents. But I do agree with a lot you're saying. I think plot wise, like you said, it is slow. It's so slow, and I think that's why like that off-screen deaths like really piss me off. So I put in so much time, in this movie, and I don't even get to see like the fun, or it's not fun, but that's what we're here to see. We're here to see death. It's a horror movie. So that kind of pisses me off. And then I think as well, there's kind of just a bunch of unnecessary side plots. I mean, we've mentioned like 3 of them already. Another one we haven't talked about is Chidi and her boyfriend arguing over their thesis. Who gives a fuck, dude? Like half of the side plot of like the character stuff between the non-Swedes, whatever, the students, her group, whatever. I think it's not necessary. Like there's so much tension between Christian and Chidi, obviously Christian and Danny, and obviously that's the important stuff. But I think once you get into a 2.5 hour movie, you got to figure out like where you want your characters to end up, and like all those side quests, like side quests with her dead parents, the side quests with the Brits go nowhere, the side quests with the thesis kind of end up going nowhere. So I mean, it's all kind of just there maybe to throw you off and then not go anywhere, which I very much dislike.
Do you think that they did the like thesis stealing thing just to like add another layer of like, this character's an asshole and you shouldn't like him? Or
just a Christian?
Yeah,
I guess maybe that's like giving it a better feeling at the end when Florence Pugh's like, yeah, you're dying. Everyone I guess would support that more. But I mean, I guess there's kind of just those little things thrown in to make this guy more of a dick, even though he kind of just got drugged and pretty much raped. So whatever. But
now he's stuffed inside a bear, burning to death. So tough break.
Yeah, well deserved.
I mean,
yeah.
Like not again, like as guys, like not a good character, like not a good person, not a good boyfriend, but also not not deserving of his fate at the end of the day. Like he's not that bad of a person.
he's just a terrible boyfriend. Basically.
Like he's just a bad boyfriend. He's not like physically abusive, or there's ways they could have made him worse, which I guess probably maybe jumps the shark a little bit more. And I'm glad that they don't like make him like that big of an asshole, but like for the payoff at the end, I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I don't buy that payoff at all. I don't give Florence Pugh any sort of go for it when it's like that last scene. It's like, oh, pick one. I was like, pick the other guy, like obviously. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's all kind of just messy.
All right, let's talk about the ugly. Cody, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. There's a few scenes that come to mind when you say the word ugly when it comes to this movie. But kind of in general, it's just like I don't really want to watch it again. Sort of that feeling to it. And the scene I talked about, the sex scene at the end where all the naked grandmas are just there as well. Really weird stuff. I guess it's effective in conveying some emotions for me, but not great. Probably wouldn't watch it again. But other than that, there's kind of just some gore. Really nothing too bad, I think, ugly wise. You do get some themes in here that aren't the best, but I mean, when it comes to ugly, like that scene, like I can't get that scene out of my head. Just thinking about this movie, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, that could be a good thing to a certain extent.
Well, like I said, you can look at it as a good thing, but I look at it as a very, very bad thing.
For that particular scene, it's a bad thing. we've talked kind of in the past about the red flag movies, and I would say that this, if you're like really into this movie, I think it might be a red flag movie. It's almost the female version of like American Psycho, where it's like if you're a girl who like really likes this and you start to agree with what's happening at the end, I don't know, that's a little suspicious.
That is true. I mean, if you are like actually on Florence Pugh's side,
I don't
like
know if
I think
anybody is, but I'm sure there are
I feel
people.
like people probably are. I mean, just like knowing the general public, I feel like people definitely are. But yeah, it's a good point. I would 100% constitute this as a red flag movie if you like are overly hyped about this for some reason. That's a great point.
Let's move on to weird movie details trivia.
Rob,
Naked grandma!
naked, huh?
I got 2 questions for you, Cody.
I have 2 as well. You can start stuff.
All right. Where was this film mostly shot? Sweden, Slovakia, Austria, Norway, Hungary, Denmark.
You're gonna give me, just the entire continent of Europe. Well, it does take place in Sweden, so that's a shout. But I guess it's not filmed there since you gave me 10 other countries. From the ones that I'm not gonna make you repeat those. You're welcome. The ones that stood out were Hungary or Denmark. So I'm gonna go with Denmark.
Oh, it was Hungary, Cody. So close.
I should have points for
Disappointing.
that. That's actually really funny. Almost got it. All right, I have 2 questions. My first one, oh yeah, my questions have nothing particularly to do about the movie, of course. My first one, the doozy. Yeah, and there is multiple choice here. So in the show The Good Place, have you seen The Good Place, Corbin?
Watch the first season.
Oh shit. Well, the question's about that. So in the first season, what's the plot twist at the end of the season that Ellen and Chidi figure out together? Here are your options. 1, they're in the bad place already. 2, they've been tested to see if they should go to the bad place. Or lastly, Ted Danson is the devil in disguise in The Good Place.
It's the first one. It's that they're in the bad place the whole time. Although honestly, I don't think I even like watched the full season, but I know that twist. So
Interesting. I didn't think you had seen any of it, so that's why I wanted to bring it up because it is a great twist in telly, especially just from like a season 1 perspective. Because they really stick with it the entire first season, and then after that, it's like a completely different show. So cool television. If you haven't seen The Good Place, go check it out.
I think I watched it in Hilltop, maybe, or maybe right after over COVID. It was a while. It was a couple of years ago when I first gave it a shot. My parents like it a lot. I know a ton of people that are huge fans, but
it's a really fun show, and it's only like I think 5 seasons total, so it's not like too much to binge through, and it's pretty good content. But
it's got our She-Hulk villain in it, right?
Does it? Who even is the She-Hulk villain, dude? I don't know. Who's the bad guy in She-Hulk?
Jamila Jamil.
Oh yeah, Jamila Jamil's. No, she's great in that show. That's true. I forget she's in She-Hulk. That movie's so fucking. That show's so forgettable. But yeah, Jamila Jaman. I think it's Jamila Jaman. She also has a great show with the Impractical Jokers that she does too. So shout out that.
Huge. All right, this is not related to the movie. In 2020, Florence Pugh began posting cooking videos to her Instagram story before stopping because people were being mean about her and Zach Braff dating. But what was the title of this series?
Are there options?
No.
Okay. Something with Florence or Pugh. Is there any like cooking words along with that?
It's a very simple name. I think Olivia Wilde potentially.
Olivia Wilde. Booksmart.
Things that she might have called her.
I have no idea. What did Olivia Wilde call her?
She called her Miss Flo, but the title was Cooking with Flo. Cody, you don't know about
Cooking
that?
with Flo.
Not a big fan.
I shouldn't know about that. It's probably because I have Zach Braff blocked on Instagram. But Cooking with Flo, it sounds like a progressive commercial more than Cooking with Flo and Pugh.
They should have done a collab.
They should have. I would have watched that. But yeah, interesting question. Cooking with Flo. I like it. My last question. This one is a fun one. And This is what I was referencing when I went back and looked through the actor for Christian. I don't even know his name.
Jack Rayner,
His IM Jack Rayner, sure. His
the
IMDb.
Irish lad.
Yeah, I found something interesting because I knew I recognized him from somewhere, and it was from a Transformers movie. So Korbin, which Transformers movie was Kristen in which he talked about the law that makes it legal to date an underage girl if they have been dating for a year or something?
The old Romeo and Juliet law.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's the first one because that just, that seems bold out of the gate. That seems like a sequel type of conversation. Definitely seems like a Michael Bay thing. I'm gonna go Dark of the Moon.
Good guess. That would be Transformers 3.
Yeah, no, not Revenge of the Fallen. I know it's the second one. I know which Transformers are which, Cody.
I was making sure the audience knew. We're actually looking for Transformers 4, Age of Extinction. The first one with Marky Mark.
Wahlberg. I
Yeah,
saw that.
Wahlberg's daughter.
I saw that in Texas at one of those dine-in AMCs when it came out. So there you go.
I actually don't know if I've ever actually seen it, but I've seen that scene on like Twitter and YouTube and stuff where literally it's just like a minute scene in the movie where Christian, the guy in this movie, is talking about how it's legal for him to date Mark Wahlberg's underage girlfriend, which I thought was despicable. So shout out that guy, shout out Michael Bay, shout out Mark Wahlberg. But yeah, that's where I knew this guy from. So fair enough.
I'm gonna not look that scene up, but sounds great. Great movie, clearly.
Yeah, his little
not
card
good.
he pulls out. He has it's like a little legal card he has. It's good stuff.
Jeez. All right. Let's take a commercial break and we'll be right back. New ad. New music.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're back. Welcome to the Academy.
There's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
Moonlight won. Come on, this is not a joke.
Category where we award our own awards, our very own KHAP Academy Awards. I think just like two off the bat, in terms of real awards, best production design, best cinematography, I think this would be deserving of a nomination, or at least a win. Like I really think that we've had the critiques about the story, but in terms of that stuff, like it is some of the best, I would say.
Yep. And that was my first point as well. I would have nominated it for best cinematography. I think it is that good. And I went back and looked at the noms actually, and obviously there's a lot of good nominees. 1917 ended up winning, which is
2019 was a tough, like a good year of movies. So
yeah, but Joker was nominated, which I probably would have taken this movie over it. So I didn't want to nominate for that. But yeah, I have a really weird one I want to talk about. Do you have any other academies you want to nominate for?
Well, I think last week I talked about like it being the worst on-screen relationship. I would say this one probably beats out the previous. So this is, especially in terms of communication skills, this is the worst relationship communication skills. Because a lot of it just comes down to them just not talking to each other, Cody, and that's really important. Being honest and communicating is very important for a relationship. Also, going to a foreign country and joining a cult and becoming their flower queen, May Queen, I will award the worst way to deal with your trauma. And also best girl boss movie. Honorable mentions to I Care a Lot, which is the you familiar?
Yeah.
Gone Girl, which is another. Rosamund Pike. She's the queen of the girl boss movie. And then Promising Young Woman, which also another girl boss film. So
those are great nominees there. Yeah, great awards around. Can't argue with any of them. I do have just one strange one. I thought I think I would give this movie, the award for the worst use of a bear. How do you just waste a bear in a movie? I feel like it's pretty hard to do. But they just wrap him up in it basically and burn him. So kind of tough.
It's interesting because there's like the film idea of like Chekhov's gun, where you see a gun in the first act, it needs to be fired in the third act. And very early in this movie, we see this bear in a cage. And I guess traditional expectations would say like, this bear is going to attack somebody. This like it's going to play an important role, and it does play an important role. However, I think Aster interestingly subverts your expectations a little bit in the way that the bear is used. You find that to be ineffective, though, I guess.
Yeah, I disagree with that pretty much. I do think that's fun because in the beginning of the movie, there's even a throwaway line where he's like, "So we're just going to ignore the bear sitting there or whatever." Like, okay, something's going to happen with that later. But yeah, I don't really like the use at all, if I'm being completely honest. And there was another movie who they do use a bear pretty bad.
The Revenant?
No, I like that use. A bear attacking somebody. I like that. In The Shining, I don't know if you're familiar with the scene. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like a fake bear costume, but the guy's like, he's kind of like masturbating. There's no other way to really say it. It's called The Masturbating Bear. So yeah, that would probably be up there. Shout out The Shining, great film. But
what do you think about all the things that Mark Wahlberg does with that teddy bear in Ted and Ted 2 and Ted 3? Is there 3 of those? At least 2 of them.
Yeah, I think there might be a third one coming. But yeah, I like that bear. He's, he says some offensive stuff in Seth MacFarlane's voice, so I'm a fan.
Paddington Bear, he's well utilized.
I would see Paddington. Evidently, a couple of the best movies ever made, but yeah, he'd probably stay off the worst bear list, I guess.
And another honorable mention, Fozzie Bear. Terrible.
Hey, don't hate on my boy Fozzie. Yeah, come on. That's just disrespectful.
All right, we'll move on to Invite, Fight, Night.
I dub thee Sir William.
For this category, it's kind of an iteration of Marry, Fuck, Kill, but who are we inviting on the pod? Who do we want to fight? And who do we want to knight? Let's start with Invite. For me, going outside of the confines of like the movie, I would love to have Florence Pugh on the pod. I think she's a very charismatic person. I think she'd be a really interesting person to talk about movies with. And obviously is the most successful out of all the people in this, but just in general, I think she'd be the most interesting to talk to. She got a great accent too. So good listening stuff. Good for a podcast.
It'd be perfect for a podcast with that accent. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. My pick was my boy Chidi, though. Me and Chidi, I don't know. I think this is one of my favorite guys working in Hollywood today for some reason. But even his character, like he's a scholar, he's a gentleman. He did break into their text and take pictures. So that's wrong. But he just has the best vibes, I think, from this group. He doesn't have any toxic vibes, like pretty much everybody else. So shout out him. And I think it'd be interesting to, pick his brain on a lot of, some of his thesis. Obviously, he's dead, so we'd have to do it before they go on this trip and stuff.
Different kind of picking of the brain, I think.
Well, well said there. But I think just like his studies in general would be something interesting to go into. So even for the character, I think it'd be a good pick to have on.
I did have a secondary option of Pele, which not a a podcast is a good format because we're not in the same place. So as long as I don't have to go visit his cult to have a discussion with him, but in terms of if he would agree to tell the full truth, he's obviously is well informed about what's going on. So if you want to get down to any cult member, I guess there's a lot you could interview them about. Not sure about their thoughts on movies, but
true. Pele would have some good thoughts, I think. But I think that would be the person I would want to ask the most questions to as well, would be Pele. So that is a good one as well.
Because he kind of plays that in. Obviously he's kind of like the missionary or like the recruiter, but it's it's interesting because he's gone out and he's in university. He's in a part of the Americanized Western civilization, and he's still a person who yearns to return to this place and sees this as his home. So I think it would be definitely interesting to kind of get his perspective. And
just to bounce it off that, to go into our fight, this is who we're gonna physically encounter with. I did pick Pele for a couple of reasons we're talking about. First off, he's just a fake ass friend, for being completely honest. He knew what he's bringing these folks into, and no remorse there. But as well, I want to fight him because he's created a terrible stereotype now. You know what college they go to? I don't even know. NYU, something stupid. Wherever they go to, Swedes are not going to be, too. No, I don't want to say like welcome, but I don't think anybody's going to want to be friends with any other Swedes going to this university after word of this goes out, where 5 students or whatever
NYU
go
Cody
to a
could get. It's not even
It
said
is,
in the
wow.
movie, but it is addressed in the script. So there you go.
Well, that's a straight guess, so we'll take that. Give me another point for trivia there. But yeah, I think like just word's gonna get out that a Swede took 5 students to Sweden and nobody ever heard from them again. So I don't think that's gonna turn out well. So I kind of just want to fight Pele just because all the other Swedes going to NYU now are going to be stereotyped and probably no one's gonna want to be their friend. So fuck that guy.
I appreciate you standing up for the Swedes of NYU. I'm sure they're really struggling. International
They,
students at a prestigious university have probably have a tough life.
they deserve better.
Exactly. Get him to a real school. Get him to Purdue, man.
Yeah, true. We'll take some Swedes at Purdue. I don't think there were statistically too many. So yeah.
Nothing wrong with
Hey,
that.
if you don't want to go to NYU anymore, just go to Purdue, I guess.
I will say now listen, like I said, I don't think he's deserving of his fate, but I think he's probably deserving of getting fought. I'll fight Christian. Like I think he might need some little bit of a roughing up, but I don't think he needs to be burned alive after being raped. That's unfortunate, but he is kind of an asshole, and it probably needs to treat probably women in general, but specifically his girlfriend a lot better. So, and then the other one, I also want to fight Ari Aster because, like, what the fuck, dude? Like,
why'd you make me watch this, dude? Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
I back both this.
Yeah. Knight, Cody. Who do you want to knight?
I have a couple. First off, I do want to knight. Florence Pugh, I guess her character too, for dancing for probably like 5 straight hours while very high on mushrooms. So I think that's pretty impressive. She does get, the May Queen or whatever, but I think the knighthood is much more important, than just being the May Queen.
Obviously she can't become a knight, but she is English. There's potential one day. Dame Florence Pugh. What do we think? Is it going to happen? This is our prediction. Will she be by Charles or whoever now? Rip the Queen?
Yeah, whoever will be alive by then, I don't know. But I'd say maybe. She's a young actress. She started off very, very successfully. It takes a long time,
I don't know what the requirements necessarily are, but
probably like public service and stuff. I don't know. Like Judi Dench is a dame. Meryl Streep? No, she's not English.
She's American.
Well, she would be damed if
for sure. Ian McKellen, that's.
These people are all like 80 years old, so
Julie
it's
Andrews.
Hard to, it's hard to tell. I think when Florence Pugh is like 25, 30 right now, on whether she's going to be a dame or not. Betting odds are probably against it, but yeah, sure. I'd say down the line I could see it.
I really struggled to pick somebody for this because, like, again, like none of the characters are super redeemable. I guess we've talked that we like Chidi, but in reality, like he's still like not necessarily a good person. So in my attempt to save somebody's life, I'm gonna knight the old dude that jumps off the cliff because I want to let him know that there's something more to live for, man. So I'm gonna make him a knight, and I'm gonna give him another 5 years.
Wow, what a nice guy. I think with him, I probably would have picked a girl over him. Just because
I'll pick them both.
Well, that's fair. But when I say I figure it's gonna be kind of mean, but when he lands, he goes leg first.
He's kind of dumb.
Very effective. That's
that's kind of a dumb decision to be honest.
But anywho, that is kind of mean. But anywho, I did want to knight one more person, and I kind of agree with you. There's not a lot of good picks here. My specific person is the guy in the barn at the end who volunteered himself. So there were 2 guys who volunteered themselves, and they both ended up getting caught on fire, obviously. And one of them started screaming. I want to knight the guy who didn't start screaming, just because the amount of just like willpower, I think, when you're burning on fire to not start yelling, I think that's incredible. So
that's a man you want on your team for sure. You want him by your side.
Yep. But
It's a really good pick,
kind
Cody.
of cherry picking a really weird person, but there's not a lot of people to pick from.
Based on that one scene, I think it's a good place to go from. All right, time for the recast.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
I just have one pick here.
Okay, I have two. I'll start us off. And my first one I actually really really like. So I want to get rid of Pele's dad, who I mean, it's probably good to have like unknown like Swedish type actors in these roles, but I want to throw in Willem Dafoe in this movie, just because I think it's missing maybe like a main antagonist. You know, obviously there's like the mom and like all these Swedish people are bad, but we don't have like a main one. I think we make Willem Dafoe Pele's dad. Like he probably has the most speaking lines out of all the cult people, anyways. And he also has Willem Dafoe's face, which is scary as shit. So yeah, I just really want to see him in this movie.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like you said, like it's effective because it is just like a bunch of like real Swedish people that we don't know, but that is a pretty solid pick for that type of role. I think it's akin to some of the stuff in The Lighthouse. And I mean, yeah, he's just a crazy dude. Like he maybe almost too like naturally scary. And I think that's like, you maybe need it to be like a little bit like, oh, maybe these people are okay, but I don't like that kind of like question mark and that ambiguity with Willem Dafoe. Maybe it's kind of like, this is like a messed up dude when you kind of look at him in most roles, the way he presents
make him look okay. Yeah, he's still a respectable looking Yoan, but he is pretty scary.
Yeah. So my pick, and it's funny, you know, we're bringing back the Booksmart talk, and while I think Will Poulter is really great in this, I want to take Skylar Gisondo from Booksmart. You remember his character, Cody?
Which one is it? Skylar Gisondo?
He's like the rich kid with the boat that throws the party.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I want him to take Will Poulter's role because, again, I think he can just play a shithead really well as well. So, and I think he would be even more fun than Will Poulter, which Will Poulter's already having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a good pick. That kid really hasn't written too much either, so I like that. Nice little Booksmart reference there. And then my other one, I did want to replace Christian, kind of bring in maybe a little bit more of a better actor. I think maybe give this guy some more lines too. But I don't even know how young John David Washington is, but give me a correctly aged John David Washington in this role. I think he'd actually be really good. Like I said, I do.
He's like the same age as him.
Really? I think he's older for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, I think he'd be really good in this movie. I think
he is 38, so he is like 8 years older than Jack Ryan.
Yeah, like I said, just we're going back in time here, so give me a little bit younger, where he mixes in perfectly. Yeah, kind of another person where you know, they haven't been in a ton really, and kind of just throwing them into all these movies, I think would make the movie better because I think they're a good actor. So yeah,
I just thought of this is like kind of off the top of my head, but I think Jamie Dornan could play that role pretty well. He's the 50 Shades of Grey guy, also in Belfast.
Oh, that's that is. I was like, I know that name, Jamie Dornan. Yeah, you know, I've seen like snippets of 50 Shades of Grey. I haven't seen Belfast, so I don't know if I back that. But I'll take your word.
I would say he like basically has a very similar look, and then he's just a better actor. Yeah. So like,
I feel like that beard look, they do look pretty similar. Like if they're cousins or something.
I mean, he's like Northern Irish. They're, you know, from the same part of the world.
Potatoes. They both like potatoes.
Well, yeah.
Got to bring out the Irish accent.
All right, time for our rating.
You're gonna look at me and you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong? Am I wrong?
Out of 69, I am curious where you're gonna go with this. I'll start though. Really, honestly, like for as high as this movie is, it's almost entirely because of the technical achievements of it. So for me, it's gonna be a 47 out of 69, which like is still not super high, but
it's not high at all. It's extremely low.
It's a 3.5 star for me.
Fair enough. Mine is a wee bit higher than that. I'm gonna go with a 49 out of 69. Keep it 20 apart. But yeah, I think this movie is interesting, and I probably would rewatch it for some reason. Not anytime soon, but just for like the technical stuff, I think I would want to give that another look. But yeah, overall, I was a little bit disappointed in this movie.
All right, we got Defeat the Watchlist. So if you remember our last episode, I was assigned the movie Gremlins to watch, and it was the first time I'd seen Gremlins.
Yeah.
I guess my thoughts were just like, so the main character, the actor playing him is pretty young looking, because I guess when they originally wrote the script, he was supposed to be in high school, and then they'd cast him, and then they like kind of rewrote it. So he's just like this really young looking bank teller, which is kind of just a strange choice. Also, there's like, it shows kids in school, but it's supposed to be Christmas Eve, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, why are these kids going to school on Christmas Eve? But really, the majority of this movie just comes down to people not knowing how to take care of their pets. And I think it's, that's an important message. Like, if you're gonna adopt an animal, you should follow the rules that are given to you by the man that you're stealing it from, I guess, basically. So yeah, don't
especially
fucking feed them after midnight.
Yeah, especially if they're very specific rules. Those are pretty much the only ones.
Like if they're telling you don't put it in water and don't feed it after midnight, like that might make you question, like, maybe I shouldn't do this, and yet we're just gonna like let it all happen. And I mean, this kid's supposed to be a bank teller. You'd think he'd have a little bit more sense of responsibility, but guess not.
They didn't get that in bank telling training, I guess. Follow the rules.
It is cool because this movie is, you wanted me to pick a horror, and you said it wasn't a scary movie. It is kind of frightening at points, and it's rated PG, and this movie, along with Raiders, are the reason that they created the PG-13 rating, which is always a cool anecdote to bring up when you're talking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously does have some horror aspects, but like in my head, it'll always just be like a kids movie. I don't know why. I think it's just because, well, it's a lot of little things, but it does have some horror elements, which is cool.
Like at one point, his mom like sticks a gremlin in the microwave and microwaves it to death, and like the crazy like landlord lady, which I mean, this is I like this scene where the landlord gets it, but the mean landlord lady like gets like murdered by these gremlins in her house. Like there's like stuff happens that's like pretty intense for a kids movie.
That's true. It was the 80s though, who cares?
Everything was different. And like every 80s movie, it's horny. All 80s movies are horny. That's just a fact.
That's very true. Especially getting set in high school, but I guess even in the banks too, they're horny there as well. So.
Damn straight. All right, Kody. Time for you to pick the movie for our next edition of Defeat the Watchlist. What are you feeling today?
I don't know. I think maybe I'm feeling the last couple ones done horror. What do we do before that? Comedy? Oh no, it was that other movie. Well, let's go comedy. I'm a comedy guy.
Short Term 12, Chasing Amy.
Yeah. Oh, Chasing Amy. So I guess we have done a couple comedies. I don't know. Let's go like action or something then.
Action movie, okay. Narrowed it down to 127. You want to go any further? You just want to shuffle.
Let's do like actually no, just shuffle. Let's just shuffle a couple times and see what we get.
Well, yeah, we're gonna do like the 3 shuffle thing, right? Is that what we say?
Yeah.
All right, so first one, Big Trouble in Little China, John Carpenter film.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be a great one for you.
Right. Next shuffle, Guns Akimbo, which is the Daniel Radcliffe movie where I think he has guns for hands.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And then the third shuffle is going to give us, okay, well, it gave us Big Trouble in Little China again, Kody. So I feel like maybe that's destiny saying, I mean, what are the chances?
127, yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah, I was going to pick that one anyways. I think you have a lot of fun with that one. So yeah, Big Trouble it is.
Yeah. And hey, we're sticking in the 80s, which is a good segue to say that our next episode will be the 1980s movie draft. We've already recorded it, but definitely check that out in the coming days.
Absolutely. No, good one. And of course, movie draft, a lot of good guests. So definitely check it out.
Time for We Have a Podgorithm. Draw a movie. Hot take, 30 seconds on the clock to give your opinion. And The movie is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You want me to start?
No, I'll start.
And go.
This movie haven't seen for a while. Growing up, I did read the Chronicles of Narnia books, so I was a big fan. But this movie's mostly forgettable. I feel like the first one is, you know, okay. What do you have? James McAvoy as the goat guy or whatever. That's kind of cool throwback. But you know,
Famous.
Aslan, yeah, sure. Aslan's cool. I feel like as a whole, it kind of missed the mark. And then when they did the sequels, those were like god awful. So yeah, not something I particularly want to revisit, but Disney still does. I feel like marketed a good amount because I feel like they did make a decent amount of money on the first one. Yeah, all in all, trash.
I'll just jump in and say that I think like these movies should have been really successful. Like it's a
Yeah,
really rich source material, and obviously the way that they were kind of written and released is a little interesting with like the timing and the chronological order. And but they decided to go with this movie first. Obviously, it's the most successful of the three they made. Have you seen Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Cody?
I have. Yeah, great flicks.
Yeah, Voyage of the Dawn Treader is fucking awful. That movie's bad. I think I saw it. I think I saw all three of these in theaters. But yeah, just should have been better. Obviously, I mean, like when your story is literally just like based on the Bible, the most classic of all literature, it was not very successful. So, also Tilda Swinton. Did you say that? I don't. Yeah, Tilda
I did
Swinton,
not
the
know.
Ice
Forgot
Queen.
about her. She's the witch, isn't she?
Yeah,
Shout out Tilda. Great
shout out
role.
Tilda.
But I think you're right, though. I mean, like the books, they're not in chronological order. So
Yeah, it's
I
like
think
well, it's
it
like you have to like skip every book that was like released, and they did because they like yeah, it's weird, strange.
yeah, it's really weird. And there's like a couple books that are just like side quests for like characters we don't even know. So it is hard to adapt. I think the whole story. It does make sense, kind of starting there. But after that, yeah, it was just a sham. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll try to do it again in like 50 years. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. All right, and now finally our weekly recommendations.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Yeah, I got a few. So spoiler, we did, like you said, record the '80s draft yesterday, and there was some high praise for a movie that I hadn't seen. When Harry Met Sally. I think like 3 or 4 of the people on the panel were like, "Oh, I fucking love that movie. Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever." So I was like,
I
"Oh,
was
maybe I
one
should
of
check it
them.
out." I know it's only like an hour and a half. So yesterday I did a double special viewing. I watched Men in Black 2 for the first time, and then back to back with it, I watched When Harry Met Sally. I probably liked When Harry Met Sally a little bit more than Men in Black 2.
Yeah, it's a better movie, I'd say.
Yeah, Men in Black 2, pretty shit. Pretty shit. Probably give it like 1.5. We'll see what I give it on Letterboxd. But they just use like effects so unnecessarily, and they just don't hold up now. So it's kind of tough. But When Harry Met Sally, I thought it was good. I thought it was a little overrated from your guys' standpoint. I always do that thing with expectations. Whenever somebody's like, "Oh, it's a great movie, you should watch it," I like ended up watching it right away, and I'm like, it was okay. So I think JD said, you need to watch it multiple times or something too, or his perspectives change. I don't know, something good from JD. But possibly, if I give it like 10 more years, maybe it'll be a lot more effective on me. But I would recommend it. I do like Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan a lot. Yeah. Other than my double special, got the classic stuff. She-Hulk, House of Dragon. Both released a couple of episodes this week. She-Hulk. It was probably better than last week, so it's got that going for it. But House of Dragon, they officially did the actress swap, which I kind of don't like. I kind of really like the set of actresses that we had for Rhaenyra and what's her face. So that kind of sucks. And I know it's like this was supposed to be like a limited series, I think, just one season thing. But then after like one episode, they greenlit it for season 2. So I don't know why they just didn't do like the first season with the younger actresses, and the second season maybe you do that time jump just to give them more time to flesh out those characters. I don't know. I could be way off, but that's kind of dumb.
One thing I did see that, like, just on Twitter is that they've kind of like toyed with the idea that they don't have to be linear with their storytelling. So there is still a potential that, like, you might see some of these actresses that have been aged out return at some different, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They can do whatever the fuck they want, right? Like, there's,
Yeah, they could do like the Godfather 2 part of it, where you go back and forth in time, just get these younger actors involved. I don't know. It's kind of dumb, regardless, and I they probably will do that now that you say that, just because they're going to make more money doing that. So that doesn't really excite me, though, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, fair enough. Those are all my recs this week, though.
The last thing I want to recommend is a shout out to our boys over the Rough Cut Retrospective. They're releasing their 100th episode this Friday. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. Sounds like they got some big stuff planned, and then, lots of stuff moving forward. They do great stuff over there. So
yeah, they just did a great episode on Shrek versus Shrek 2, which is one of my favorites they've done in a while. So yeah, shout out that as well. Good stuff.
New season of Survivor is out. Episode 2 premieres tonight at the release of this episode. So what'd you think of the premiere?
I thought the premiere was, it was interesting. It was fun. Survivor talk is back on KHAP, baby. Love to hear that. You're gonna have to deal with that every week. But premiere wise, I thought it was pretty good. There's a lot of good characters. The tribal council I thought was interesting. It wasn't it ended up being a straightforward vote, but it didn't look like it was going to be. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's some new twists, whatever. But overall, I thought like it was a kind of a character piece episode, which is really good. There was a reward right at the beginning, and then there was an immunity right at the end, and everything else was just the island, everything social, which is my favorite part of the game is the social interactions and trying to maneuver. Who are we going to vote out? So I really like that. But yeah, it's hard to tell early, but I thought it was a strong start.
The social stuff made the episode a little slower, like especially for it being like a 2-hour season premiere. I watched it last night, and it definitely felt like, this is kind of dragging on a little bit. I would have liked a little tighter of an edit sometimes. They're big on the new the drone shots this season, like the fancy ones that like fly through stuff. They're really showing off, hey, look what a drone can do, which, I mean, drones are cool, but it seems like the hottest thing. I mean, they flew one of those drones through our office, like, around the corners, through awards, through people's heads. Obviously, like stuff like Ambulance, Michael Bay's been really into it. Extraction, the Netflix movie. FPV drone shots have become very popular as of late.
Of course, Survivor's taking off on that trend. Yeah, I didn't notice that as well. I don't know why they like doing those so much, but I think they just get bored on the island out there, and they're like, oh, how can we do like this shot that we've done a billion times differently? You're like, holy shit, we have $5 million drones. Let's use this. Why not? But yeah, hopefully they do move back a little bit on the usage of those, because I think they did it multiple times in the premiere. So
yeah. I think I do like a lot of the cast. I almost don't like, I need somebody to dislike a little bit more. I need some like villain type characters to come. I mean, I know it's the first episode, but it seems like everybody's getting along too much. Nobody's scheming too hard. Nobody's playing. Like, even like that vote, like you said, was kind of up in the air because nobody wanted to be like, hey, like, let's just vote this person out. Like, they were all like, oh, we're all one big. I mean, they did the whole we won today. It was a moral victory, which Jeff was not having. But
yeah, it's I forget the guy's name, but the really hick guy,
Gabler.
Gabler. Yeah, that guy sucks. But I feel like he is more indicative, like old school Survivor, where it is that mentality of, we don't have to worry about anything until we lose. And I think that tribe kind of embodied that a little bit. And
that dude also said he was going to play a shot in the dark, which I don't know what he was smoking.
He's also an idiot. He'll be a fun character just because of his gameplay, because he's being super aggressive, but he has no idea what he's doing. And he has an idol that's good for one more tribal council, and then he's saying he's going to play a shot in the dark, which it's kind of an effective strategy, because people are like, oh, let's keep this guy along because like he's an easy target once we get to the merge. Like, everyone's going to be pissed off because this guy is doing dumb stuff. So it's kind of effective because I feel like in past seasons, like, oh, you're gone. Like, if you're an outsider at all, you're going to be gone pretty early. But now in these, it's kind of like I can hang on to this person because in the end, like I'm going to be able to beat them, like without a doubt. So interesting gameplay, but yeah, that guy's an idiot.
All right. Any early predictions for a winner, Cody?
Oh, great question.
If you know anybody's names, even.
Yeah, it's hard to remember the names after the first episode. I do like Owen a lot, who was at that first tribal council. I think he's an interesting player. But it looks like
I think them not voting him
steps.
out, they might regret, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. But other than that, shit, dude, I don't know. It's been a couple days since I watched the episode. We'll come back next week and I'll have the character names more pat down, I think.
Fair enough. I don't have a pick, but you're the expert, so I know who I'll be rooting for the guy that had cerebral palsy because I think he has a really cool story and it's really impressive what he's doing.
Oh yeah, is it? I don't remember who that is.
I'm trying to get his name.
Whose name is Cody, who I really like as well. So shout out Cody. It's Cody with a C.
Oh yeah, Cody's that I know Cody that you're talking about. Yeah. He's the guy who's the elevator guy. He was like, yeah, I'm people in sales. They're no good. And then he's like, I'm in sales.
Oh, she's in sales. We better target her. Like, what? You're in sales too. Like, why don't you go bond with the salesperson?
Ryan. Ryan is the name of the guy. There's also the other guy that's on the same tribe as Cody, Jesse, who's in the gang. He also has a really interesting story.
Oh, I like him a lot. I thought just like his intro was super interesting because he was kind of going around talking to everybody. Everybody was throwing names on the bus, and he was kind of just like playing it cool. But you actually learn his story, wild stuff. He was in a gang, then he got a juvie, and then like he's got his doctorate. Like he's completely changed his life around. So I think he could definitely be a wild card who people will underestimate a bit. I mean, he did tell them like some of the gang stuff. So I think that'll be a really cool arc as we move along in season 2.
I think there's definitely some interesting people and nobody that at this point is too annoying. So which is good. So
I'm sure they'll change that in a couple episodes.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, this has been a fun one. Midsommar, however you want to pronounce it. Fun movie to talk about.
Thank you. I think it's a great choice, personally.
Yeah, great work. Just in a couple days, check out our 80s movie draft, and then we'll see you in the next one after that. Peace.
Thank you, Captain.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.